Pay up, or we burn everything you love. Derek Voss leaned across the counter, close enough that Logan could smell the cigarette on his breath, and smiled like a man who had never once been told no. Logan didn't flinch. He didn't raise his voice. He just set down his wrench, wiped his hands on the shop rag, and looked Derek dead in the eye. Get out of my garage. 3 words, quiet, final. Derek laughed. Because what could a lonely mechanic with a 10-year-old son possibly do? He had absolutely no idea. If this story is already pulling you in, hit that subscribe button right now. Drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from, and let's see together just how far this story can travel. Now, let's go back to the beginning, because to understand what happened that day, you need to know who Logan Whitmore really was. The town of Silver Creek, Arizona didn't ask many questions. That was the thing about small desert towns. They had a way of accepting people at face value, letting a man be whoever he showed up as without pressing too hard on the details. If you paid your taxes, kept your yard clean, waved at your neighbors on the way to the mailbox, Silver Creek would leave you alone. That suited Logan Whitmore just fine. To everyone in town, Logan was simple to understand. He was the mechanic on Route 9. The guy who opened his shop before the sun was fully up and locked it after dark. Single father whose boy Caleb spent after-school hours doing homework on the old wooden stool behind the front counter, occasionally handing tools to his dad without being asked, because the kid had already figured out the rhythm of the garage the way other children figure out the rhythm of a bedtime story. Logan was blond, broad-shouldered, quiet in the way that some men are quiet, not because they have nothing to say, but because they have learned that most things don't require saying. He had blue eyes that looked like they'd seen weather. Not storm damage exactly. More like the kind of weathering that happens slowly, over years when a man carries something heavy and chooses never to put it down. He was 38 years old. He'd been running Whitmore Auto Repair for 6 years. Before that, most people assumed he'd drifted in from somewhere else. Maybe New Mexico, maybe Nevada, the way a lot of people in Silver Creek had drifted from somewhere else. Nobody pressed. That was the deal. His son Caleb was 10, with Logan's same blonde hair and his late mother's dark eyes, a combination that made the kid look a little like a photograph taken in 2 different eras of the same family. Caleb was smart, steady, the kind of child who made adults around him feel oddly calm without understanding why. He helped around the garage, kept his grades up without being pushed, and had an ability to sense his father's mood that bordered on supernatural, the way children who grow up without one parent develop an extra sensitivity to the one they still have. Logan's wife, Melissa, had been gone for 4 years. He didn't talk about it. Not with customers. Not with the few people in town who'd become something close to friends. He wore a plain wedding band still, silver and worn thin at the edges, and if anyone noticed it, they were respectful enough not to remark. Silver Creek had seen grief before. It knew what a man carrying it looked like. Silver Creek did not know what no one in town knew was the 14 years that existed before Logan Whitmore showed up with a 2-year-old son in a Ford pickup with out-of-state plates and leased the old garage on Route 9. Those 14 years were not something Logan discussed. They were not something he displayed. They were not something he allowed into the garage, into his conversations, into the way he introduced himself at Caleb's school functions or community potlucks. Those 14 years were under his shirt. Specifically, they were on his left forearm, a tattoo, mostly faded now, that a much younger man had earned in a very different life. Logan kept it covered, long sleeves year-round, even in Arizona summer. Even when the heat inside the garage turned the air into something thick and breathable only by necessity. He had his reasons. He always had his reasons. The first time Derek Voss walked into Whitmore Auto, it was a Tuesday morning in late October. Logan was under a 2009 F-150, diagnosing an exhaust problem for one of his regular customers, retired postal worker named Earl, who brought every mechanical complaint to Logan before he brought them to anyone else, including his own adult sons. Caleb was at school. The radio on the workbench was playing something low and country, the kind of station that never announced the song titles and just let the music accumulate in the background like dust. Logan heard the bell above the door and called out from under the truck without moving. "Be with you in a minute. Take your time." said a voice he didn't recognize. I'm not in any hurry. Something about the voice made Logan pause underneath the truck. Wasn't the words were perfectly pleasant. It was the tone underneath the words. The tone of a man who is never in a hurry because he believes the world will wait for him. Logan had known men who talked like that. He'd known quite a few of them in his previous life. Men whose patience was actually a form of dominance, a way of communicating that they could afford to wait because they were already certain of the outcome. Slid out from under the truck, the man standing near the front counter was perhaps 40, well-built, dressed in clothes that were expensive enough to signal money, without being flashy enough to signal insecurity. Had dark hair going gray at the temples, and the face of a man who smiled often, but whose eyes had never quite learned how. He was flanked by two other men younger, thicker, the kind of men who were clearly there to be noticed. Derek Voss, the man said, extending a hand. I'm new to the area. Well, not new exactly. I've been operating in the region for a while, but I'm expanding my interest down this way. Building relationships with local business owners. Logan shook the hand once, briefly, and let it go. Logan Whitmore, what can I do for you? Actually, Derek said, glancing around the garage with the particular expression of a man appraising something he already intends to acquire, it's more about what we can do for each other. Logan waited. Silver Creek is a nice town, Derek continued. Small, safe, peaceful, mostly. But peaceful doesn't happen by accident. You know what I mean? It takes maintenance. Like a vehicle. The vehicle. Things go wrong, break down, things get out of alignment. Somebody has to stay on top of it. I agree, Logan said. That's why I'm a mechanic. Derek smiled. I appreciate the sense of humor. I do. That's good. We're going to get along. He reached into the inner pocket of his jacket and produced a small card, plain white, no logo, just a handwritten phone number, and set it on the counter. Here's the thing, Mr. Whitmore. I offer a service to businesses in the communities where I operate. Protection, peace of mind. For a modest weekly contribution, don't have to worry about break-ins. Vandalism, that kind of thing. Bad elements drifting through. You've got equipment here, customer vehicles. Your son comes by after school, am I right? The mention of Caleb was not accidental. Logan registered this the way you register a change in weather, not with alarm. Exactly. But with a recalibration of attention. $500 a week, Derek said. First payment due Friday. Logan looked at the card on the counter. He looked at Derek. He looked at the two men by the door who were trying to appear casual and failing. Then he picked up the card, turned it over once, set it back down, said no. Derek blinked. The smile didn't disappear, but it rearranged itself into something slightly different. I'm sorry? No, Logan repeated. I don't pay for protection I don't need from people I didn't ask for. You have a good morning, Mr. Voss. A beat of silence. That silence, Logan saw Derek's jaw tighten. Just slightly, just one. The kind of micro-expression that people miss if they're not looking for it. Logan was looking for it because Logan was the kind of man who had spent years in rooms where reading micro-expressions was not optional. I think maybe you misunderstood what I was offering, Derek said very carefully. I understood exactly, Logan said. My answer is no. If you need vehicle service, I'm happy to help with that. Otherwise, I've got a truck to finish. Another beat, longer this time. Then Derek nodded, slow and considered, the way a chess player nods when he's moved a piece and is already thinking 4 turns ahead. Picked up his card from the counter. He put it back in his pocket. I'll check back in, he said. Give you some time to think. No need, Logan said, and turned back toward the F-150. Heard Derek's footsteps, the door's bell, the silence after. Then he exhaled. He stood there for a moment, both hands flat on the hood of the truck, looking at the engine without seeing it. Heart was beating at a rate that his face had not shown, because Logan Whitmore, the man he had carefully, deliberately, painstakingly become over the last 12 years, was calm. Somewhere underneath Logan Whitmore, in the part of him that didn't have a name anymore, something else was listening. He didn't tell Caleb about the visit. He thought about it that evening, watching his son eat cereal at the kitchen table, and read a library book about the Mars rover program. And he decided there was nothing to tell yet. One conversation, one refusal. Men like Derek Voss tested first, that was how it worked. They walked in, they made the offer, They gauged the reaction. Logan had seemed afraid. Derek would have been back the next morning. Because Logan had seemed unbothered genuinely, not performatively unbothered, there was a chance Derek would redirect his operation toward easier targets. That was what Logan told himself. He was not entirely wrong, but he wasn't entirely right either. Word got around, the way it always does in small towns. By Thursday, Logan had heard from two other business owners on Route 9, Carl Benet, who ran the hardware store, Angela Marsh, who had operated the town's only florist shop for 11 years. Both of them, separate conversations, with the same nervous energy and the same careful pauses around the important parts, told Logan about visits from Derek Voss, or men who worked for Derek Voss. Carl had paid. He'd paid on the spot, first visit, writing a check with hands that Logan could tell had not been entirely steady. Angela hadn't paid yet, but was considering it because 2 weeks ago, a delivery truck making a run to her shop had arrived with a cracked windshield and no explanation, and the timing had felt pointed. Logan listened to both of them fully. He didn't offer opinions. He didn't tell them what he'd done. He asked careful questions: how many men usually, what times of day did they come back after the initial visit? He was assembling information the way he assembled engines, methodically, patiently, building toward a picture of how the thing actually worked. What he was learning was this: Derek Voss had been operating in the region for at least 18 months. Towns he worked were small, rural, underserved by law enforcement, the kind of places where calling the police meant waiting 40 minutes for a deputy to arrive, and where most people preferred quiet resolution over documented confrontation because documented confrontation had a way of attracting attention that outlasted the original problem. Derek's operation was clean for its type. No violence that anyone could prove was connected to him. No threats that were explicit enough to record. Just pressure, ambient, persistent, professional pressure applied with just enough plausible deniability to make it difficult to escalate formally. He was good at what he did. Logan recognized the craft in the same distant professional way he might recognize another mechanic's clean work on an engine he'd been handed to diagnose. He still wasn't going to pay. Friday came and went. Saturday morning, Logan opened the garage at 7 as usual, pulled the motorcycle he and Caleb had been rebuilding together out into the work area, a 1,978 shovel head, mechanically salvaged from near death, a long-term project that had become as much ritual as repair, and turned on the radio and started his day. Caleb arrived at 9 after a sleepover at a school friend's house, still carrying his overnight bag and looking rumpled and cheerful in the way that 10-year-olds look after staying up too late, doing nothing consequential. "How's Earl's truck?" Caleb asked. Because this was how the kid greeted his father on Saturday mornings, not with good morning, but with a status update request on whatever mechanical situation was currently in progress. "Done and delivered," Logan said. Earl cried a little. "He cries every time, I know. It's why I let him." Caleb climbed onto the stool behind the counter, pulled a homework worksheet from his bag. The morning settled into its familiar shape: the radio, the tools, scratch of pencil on paper, comfortable machinery of a Saturday in Whitmore Auto Repair. 11:15, Logan heard a vehicle slow down outside the garage. Glanced up, then he glanced at Caleb. "Hey, bud, you hungry? Why don't you go in the back and get yourself something from the fridge? There's leftover pizza." Caleb looked at him with the dark eyes that were entirely his mother's. "Just ate 2 hours ago." "Growing boys," Logan said. Caleb looked at him for another moment, that uncanny measuring look he sometimes got, like a small, serious instrument calibrating something, and then he got up from the stool and went through the door to the back office. Logan set down his wrench. The man who came in was not Derek. He was one of the two who'd been in the garage Tuesday, the thicker of the two, with a shaved head and the expression of a man doing a job he considers straightforward. "Mr. Voss wanted me to follow up," the man said. "Friday was the deadline." "I'm aware," Logan said. "The answer's the same." The man looked around the garage. His eyes paused on the shovel head. Then they went to the back door where Caleb had disappeared. "Nice bike," he said. "Shame if something happened to it." Logan's hands, hanging loose at his sides, went still. "You need to leave," Logan said. His voice was still quiet. It was always quiet, but something in the register of it had shifted barely perceptibly, the way the sound of the wind changes a moment before the temperature drops. The man heard it. He wasn't entirely stupid. He read it the way animals read things, not intellectually, but in the body, some ancient instinct twitching. He left. Logan stood there after the door closed, in the middle of his garage. The silence made himself breathe evenly for 20 seconds. Then he went to the back office. Caleb was sitting at the small desk, eating cold pizza, not looking at his homework. "Everything okay?" Caleb asked. "Everything's fine," Logan said. Caleb looked at him with those dark eyes. "Dad, yeah. Who was that?" Logan pulled a chair up and sat across from his son. Thought about what to say. Dad. He thought about the version of himself that was Logan Whitmore, mechanic father, quiet man on Route 9. Thought about the versions of this conversation he'd had with himself late at night, about how much Caleb was old enough to understand and how much was still his to carry alone. "Someone who made a bad business decision," Logan said finally, "being handled." Caleb looked at him for a long moment. "Okay," he said at last, and went back to the pizza. But Logan noticed that his son's hand wrapped around the slice was not quite steady. That was what he took with him back into the garage, not the threat, not the calculation about Derek Voss and how to neutralize the situation before it escalated, but the image of his son's hand, slightly shaking, trying not to let it show. Logan had loved two things completely and without reservation in his adult life. The first was Melissa. He had loved her with the full force of a man who came from violence and stumbled not gracefully into something he hadn't believed was available to someone like him. She hadn't been impressed by who he was in that world. She'd been drawn to who he was underneath it, the part of him that was still salvageable, still capable of something other than survival and reputation. She'd said to him once, early in their relationship, sitting on the steps of a house in Flagstaff at 2 in the morning, "I'm not in love with what you are. I'm in love with what you're trying to become. Don't stop trying." He had made her a promise, a real one, the kind that doesn't have conditions. He promised that their child would never grow up inside the world Logan had grown up inside. Their child would never see the things Logan had seen, carry the things Logan had carried, learn to read rooms the way Logan had learned, to read rooms as a survival skill, as a necessary adaptation to an environment that did not reward softness. Kept that promise he'd left, cleanly, quietly, with the respect of the people he was leaving. Because walking away wrong was as dangerous as everything else, and he'd driven to Flagstaff and married Melissa and worked at a dealership and been present for every moment of Caleb's early years in a way that Logan had not had modeled for him, but tried to construct from instinct and love and sheer determined attention. Then Melissa had gotten sick, and then Melissa had been gone. Logan had taken Caleb and driven further to Silver Creek, leased the garage, built the life, kept the promise even after the person he'd made the promise to was no longer there to receive it. Because the promise wasn't really about Melissa. It was about Caleb. The second thing Logan loved completely and without reservation was that boy. That night, after Caleb was asleep, Logan sat at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee that had gone cold and thought about Derek Voss. Thought about the shape of the Operation Professional patient designed to grind people down through accumulated pressure rather than single dramatic confrontations. Thought about Carl Binet writing that check with shaking hands. Thought about Angela Marsh and the cracked windshield and the silence around it. Thought about his son's hand around the pizza slice. Thought, this doesn't end with me paying. He also thought, this doesn't end with me going back. There had to be a third option. There almost always was. If you thought carefully and didn't let anger or fear narrow your vision down to the binary that someone else was trying to impose on you. Derek wanted Logan to see only two choices: pay or suffer. Logan knew from long experience that people who offered binary choices were usually hiding the third one. He just had to find it. He got up, rinsed the coffee cup, and checked the lock on the front door. He went to the window and looked out at the dark street. Silver Creek at midnight was completely still. Porch lights, dogs somewhere distant. The kind of quiet that people from cities mistook for emptiness when actually it was just a different kind of full, a quietness with texture to it, depth to it, the accumulated weight of a place where people lived their whole lives and knew each other's cars by sound. Logan stood at the window for a while. He was not afraid. He knew the difference between fear and awareness. Fear was reactive, involuntary, the body's alarm system triggered by stimuli. Awareness was something else, something you could cultivate, something that could coexist with calm. Logan had spent 14 years developing an extremely precise awareness, spent 12 years keeping it in reserve, like an engine in a car you no longer drive but maintain anyway, because you never know when the roads might change. He turned off the porch light. He went to bed. The room next to his, Caleb slept, dreamed whatever 10-year-olds dream, and Logan lay in the dark and listened to the quiet and understood the clear-eyed, undeceived way of a man who has made peace with the truth about himself, that the roads were changing. He didn't know yet how much. He was about to find out. Sunday was quiet, Monday was quiet, Tuesday and Wednesday were quiet. Logan half dared to believe that Derek had done the math and moved on to other calculations. Happened sometimes. Men who operated the way Derek operated were businessmen. Ultimately, they were looking for profit at acceptable risk, and a refusal that came without visible fear sometimes recalibrated the risk assessment enough to redirect the operation elsewhere. Sometimes, Thursday morning, Logan sent Caleb to school, opened the garage at 7, pulled 2 vehicles into the bays, set to work. By 10 o'clock, he was deep into the gearbox of a 2012 Silverado and had the radio turned up slightly and was thinking about a problem in the transmission that was more complicated than the initial estimate when he heard the first sound. He almost dismissed it. It was just a thump, somewhere toward the back of the building. The kind of sound old buildings make when the temperature shifts, the kind of settling creak that garages accumulate along with oil stains in history. Then there was a second sound, and it wasn't settling. Logan set down the tool he was holding. He stood very still. Then the back door of the garage came off its hinges. Not the front door, not the door with the window, the heavy steel door at the rear of the building, the one that opened to the alley, the one that Logan kept locked with a commercial-grade deadbolt, the one that he had never once heard rattle in 6 years. That door. It came in fast and it came in hard, and through it came 4 men, and Logan had maybe 3 seconds to take in the totality of what was happening before the situation became something that could not be paused and reassessed. 3 seconds, that was enough. In the first second, he identified 4 men, 2 he'd seen before, 2 he hadn't. Tools in their hands, not firearms. This was a message, not an execution. Pain and property, not finality. Derek was still in the pressure phase of his operation, which meant there were parameters. The second, he identified what they were moving toward, the equipment against the walls, the customer vehicles, the shovel head. Third second, he thought of Caleb. At school. Safe. At school. Safe. And then there was no more time for assessment, because the 4 men fanned out across his garage and began destroying it. They were systematic about it. That was the thing he hadn't expected, the professionalism of the destruction. They weren't rampaging. They were making specific, targeted choices. Diagnostic computer smashed. The compressor panel caved in. 2 customer vehicles in the bays, windows, hoods, side panel. What mattered? They knew what was expensive. And they were working through the list with the focused efficiency of men who had done this before. Logan stood in the center of the garage and did not move. This is what people don't understand about men who know how to fight the stillness. People imagine that someone with the capacity for violence is constantly on the edge of it, constantly trembling with some barely contained force. But it's actually the opposite. The more genuine the capability, the more total the stillness. Logan stood in the center of the garage with his hands at his sides and his breathing even, and he watched 4 men destroy his business, and he did not move because he was waiting, not for the right moment to fight. He was waiting to understand what the right response was. He was also cataloging. He was cataloging everything: faces, behaviors, the way each man moved, what he reached for first, how he held the tool in his hand, whether his eyes checked back to the others for confirmation. He was reading the room the way he had been trained to read rooms in a life that most of Silver Creek would not have believed existed. One of the men, the shaved head, From Saturday, the one who'd looked at the shovel had headed straight for the motorcycle. Logan's jaw tightened. The shovelhead, the project. 8 months of Saturday afternoons. Caleb handing him parts with the precise seriousness of a surgical assistant, the two of them talking about everything and nothing over the body of the old machine, rebuilding it the way you rebuild anything that matters slowly, carefully, without rushing the parts that need time to set. The shaved head man swung. The front fender crumpled. He swung again. Logan's hands at his sides closed slowly into fists, then opened again, then closed. He didn't move. Not yet, because in the middle of the destruction, in the middle of the sound of breaking glass and bending metal and the particular quality of air that fills a room where deliberate harm is being done, something else happened. One of the men Logan didn't know moved to the far side of the garage, the shelf above the parts drawers, to the corner where Logan kept things that did not belong to the repair business. The photograph. It was framed, 8 by 10, set slightly back from the edge of the shelf so it didn't catch light from the fluorescence directly. Melissa, at 29, the desert outside Flagstaff, sunlight in her hair, laughing at something the camera couldn't capture. Logan had put it there because he wanted to see it from where he worked. Because some days the work was long and the garage was quiet and he needed something. The man reached up and knocked it off the shelf. Not with purpose, or maybe with purpose, Logan couldn't know, but carelessly, in the sweep of a forearm clearing a surface for destruction. The frame hit the concrete floor. The glass cracked. Logan heard it across the length of the garage. Something not rage, because rage was never part of his vocabulary for this, but something colder and more total than rage, something without a name he'd ever been given, moved through him. He was still not moving. He was counting 4 men, no firearms visible, 2 near the vehicles, 1 at the shovel head, 1 near the shelf. The back door was open. 1 exit. He was waiting for the variable he could not yet account for. That variable arrived 11 seconds later. The front door of the garage opened. Caleb. Early release from school. Some sort of half day that Logan had written down and then completely failed to think about this morning in the way that a normal Tuesday morning brain discards information that doesn't seem immediately relevant. Caleb stood in the doorway with his backpack and a library book about the Mars rover, and he took in the garage the smashed equipment, the destroyed vehicles, the 4 men, his father standing in the center of it all in the span of perhaps 2 seconds. Then one of the men nearest the door moved toward the shelf where Melissa's things were kept, where, beside the photograph, now face down on the concrete, there was a small wooden box containing things Logan had kept from her last weeks, things private and irreplaceable, things that Caleb had once asked about, and Logan had said were mom's things for when you're older. Caleb said, "Don't touch that." Voice was steady in the way that terrified people's voices are sometimes steady, not from courage, exactly, from a kind of shocked clarity, the way extreme fear sometimes bypasses panic and goes straight to a sort of crystalline calm. The man looked at him, laughed, and moved toward the box. Caleb stepped forward and the man pushed him. Not hard. Not the push of a man trying to hurt a child, the push of a man who considers a 10-year-old an obstacle to be moved, rather than a person to be reckoned with, which was perhaps the worst version of it. Caleb stumbled back against the counter and caught himself with both hands and looked up. Eyes found his father's, and Logan Whitmore, the man he had chosen to be, the man who had promised his wife on the steps of a house in Flagstaff at 2 a.m, the man who had buried 12 years of himself in the desert of his own discipline, looked at his son's eyes, and at the counter edge, his son was gripping with both hands to keep himself upright. He walked to the garage door and turned the lock. He turned to Caleb. "Close your eyes, son." Caleb looked at him. Caleb, his voice was not loud. It was never loud. "Close your eyes." Something in the register of it, the voice that was not Logan the mechanic's voice, not the voice that chatted with Earl about the weather, or explained transmission problems to first-time customers, something in the particular quality of that voice made Caleb, without further argument, step back and close his eyes. Logan turned to face the 4 men. They were looking at him now. All of them. The destruction had paused because something in the atmosphere of the room had shifted. And even men in the middle of doing terrible things have nervous systems that register atmospheric shift. That whispered to them in the language older than words, Something is different. Something has changed. The one with the shaved head, the one who'd hit the shovel head, who'd been in the garage Saturday, who had looked at Caleb and then at the back door opened his mouth to say something. He didn't get to say it. What happened next took 53 seconds. Logan counted. He always counted. 53 seconds and 4 men, and at the end of it, the garage was quiet, and all 4 of them were on the floor in varying states of inability to continue what they had been doing. Logan had not raised his voice. He had not lost his temper. He had not, in any visible way, become someone other than himself. Had, and yet, stood in the center of the garage and breathed once, twice, and looked at the 4 men on the floor of his shop. Then he looked at his son, who had not opened his eyes. Caleb, he said. His son opened his eyes. He took in the room, took in his father. He did not look afraid exactly. He looked like a child standing at the edge of a very large and very deep thing and trying to understand how deep it goes. Are you hurt? Logan asked. No, Caleb said. Are you? Logan looked down at his hands. He checked them, briefly, the way you check a tool for damage after heavy use. No, he said. He walked to each of the 4 men and checked them efficiently, clinically, the way a man checks damage he caused to make sure it doesn't cross the line from message to consequence. All 4 were going to be uncomfortable for several days. None of them were going to be a statistic. He went to the back door. He looked at each of them. He said, in the same quiet voice he used for everything, stay away from my son. Then he turned to the photograph on the floor, crouched down, picked it up, looked at the cracked glass over Melissa's laughing face. He set it carefully on the shelf. He turned to Caleb, who was still standing by the counter, still gripping the edge, still looking at him with those dark eyes that were entirely his mother's. Logan crossed the garage, sat on the floor next to his son, back against the counter, said nothing. After a moment, Caleb slid down and sat beside him. They sat like that for a long time on the floor of the destroyed garage in the quiet after. The motorcycle was dented. The frame crumpled. The equipment was wrecked. Customer vehicles would need thousands in repair. Logan Whitmore was thinking about none of that. He was thinking, Derek Voss just made the worst decision of his life, not because Logan was angry. Because for the first time in 12 years, Logan was no longer pretending. 4 men left Whitmore Auto Repair on their own feet, barely, and that was a mercy Derek Voss would never fully appreciate. Logan gave them that walking out, instead of being carried out because he was not the man he used to be. Or maybe more accurately, he was that man, but he had learned to use that man the way a surgeon uses a scalpel instead of the way a demolition crew uses a wrecking ball. Precise, controlled, enough to end the situation without extending it into something that couldn't be walked back. He watched them go. Then he pulled the damaged back door as close to shut as its bent frame would allow, and he turned around and looked at the garage. Bad. The diagnostic computer was destroyed. 2 customer vehicles were going to need extensive bodywork before he could even assess the mechanical damage underneath. The compressor was finished. The shovel head sat with its front end caved in. The fender Logan had spent 3 Saturdays carefully sanding and priming, now buckled like a piece of paper. Someone had squeezed in a fist. On the shelf behind cracked glass, Melissa smiled at nothing. Logan stood in the middle of all of it for a long moment, long enough that Caleb, still sitting on the floor against the counter, looked up at him and said quietly, Dad, do we do? That was the question, Logan thought. That was always the question. With a kid, not what happened, not how did you do that, not who are you, but the forward-facing, practical, deeply 10 years old question of what comes next? What do we do? Because for Caleb, whatever his father was, whatever the last 53 seconds had revealed about the man who fixed transmissions and made Saturday morning pancakes and checked the math homework, whatever, all of that meant it didn't change the immediate geography of the situation, which was the garage was wrecked. They were in it. What do we do? Logan loved his son completely and without complication in that moment. First, he said, we call Earl. Caleb blinked. Earl? Why Earl? Because Earl is retired. He has a truck. He knows how to keep his mouth shut. He owes me 6 months of free labor on that F-150 he keeps pretending is fixed. Pause. And then Caleb, despite everything, despite the wreckage around them, and the four men who had just left involuntarily, and the whole tilted axis of the last 40 minutes, Caleb almost smiled. Okay, he said. And then what? Then we assess the damage. Then we figure out what I owe the customers. Then we figure out what comes after that. Those guys? Logan looked at the bent back door. They're going to go tell Derek Voss what happened, he said. Derek Voss is going to have to make a decision. Whatever decision he makes tells us what we're actually dealing with. Caleb was quiet for a moment, processing. Then you've thought about this kind of thing before. Wasn't entirely a question. Logan met his son's eyes, those dark eyes measuring and careful and older than 10, in the way that children who have lost something early are always a little older than their years. Yeah, Logan said, I have. He didn't offer more than that. Not yet. And Caleb, to his credit, to the credit of whatever intuition the boy had inherited from both parents, didn't push. Just nodded and got up off the floor and picked up Logan's phone from the workbench where it had landed during the chaos and handed it to his father. Call Earl, he said. Logan called Earl. Earl arrived in 18 minutes with his truck and without questions, which was exactly what Logan had expected. Earl Duchamp was 71 years old, retired postal worker who had spent 30 years delivering mail in rural Arizona and who had developed, over those decades, profound philosophical tolerance for other people's situations. He walked into the garage, looked at the damage, looked at Logan, looked at Caleb, had and said, "You need anything besides the truck?" "2 coffees, Logan said. "1 for you, 1 for me." "Caleb gets milk." "I'm 10, not 6, Caleb said. "Milk with chocolate in it," Logan said. Earl went and got coffees and milk with chocolate in it from the diner 3 blocks over. And when he came back, the 3 of them sat in the garage, and Logan told Earl cleanly, without drama, the flat and factual way he told people things when the facts themselves were already dramatic enough what had happened. Derek Voss, the protection offer, the refusal, the 4 men, the 53 seconds. Earl listened to all of it. He sipped his coffee. When Logan finished, Earl said, "The one with the shaved head, was he the bigger one or the one with the neck tattoo?" Logan looked at him. "Because I've seen that one at the gas station twice this week," Earl said. "Thought he was just passing through." "Guess not." "You recognize him again?" Logan asked. 71 not blind, Earl said. "I recognize him." Logan nodded slowly. He was filing things away again, building the picture. "Don't go out of your way to look at him," Logan said. "Don't change your behavior. Act like you don't know anything." "I'm a retired postman," Earl said. "Acting like I don't know anything is my primary skill set." He stood up, dusted off his hands on his pants. "What do you need moved?" They spent the next 2 hours documenting the damage, moving the customer vehicles to Earl's driveway where Logan could access them later, pulling a tarp over the shovel head. Logan photographed everything, every broken surface, every damaged piece of equipment, every customer vehicle panel. Not for the insurance claim, though he'd file one, for the record. The kind of record that might matter later, depending on how the next several days unfolded. Caleb helped without being asked. He moved things when they needed moving, held the measuring tape when Logan needed 2 hands for something else, and maintained the particular focused quiet of a child who is processing something large by directing his attention at something small and manageable. 4:30, Earl took Caleb home in the truck, and Logan locked up what was left of the garage and stood in the parking lot for a moment in the cooling afternoon air. Then he took out his phone and called a number he had not dialed in 9 years. Rang 4 times. 5 on the 6th ring, a voice answered. Gravelly, unhurried, the voice of a man who answered his phone on his own schedule, regardless of whose name was on the screen. "Well," the voice said, "Logan Whitmore." "Victor," Logan said. Pause. Not an uncomfortable one. The pause of a man resettling in his chair, adjusting his position, recalibrating for a conversation he hadn't expected, but wasn't entirely surprised by either. "Been a while." 9 years, Logan said. 9 years and 4 months, Victor said. "I counted. You good?" "I have a situation." Another pause. Shorter this time. "Tell me," so Logan told him. The same clean version he'd told Earl, but with different parameters in mind, because Victor Kane was not Earl Duchamp. Victor Kane was a man who existed in a world Logan had left, who therefore would hear the information through a different filter and arrive at different conclusions and, most importantly, ask different questions. Victor asked 3 questions when Logan finished. The first was, did anyone get hurt permanent? No, Logan said. Good. A beat. What's the man's operation look like? How long has he been running it? 18 months at least in the region. Clean, no direct threats on record, just pressure and property. He's got 4 or 5 men that I've counted. Could be more. He's not stupid, but he's stupid enough to hit a man's garage when the man said no, Victor said. That's its own kind of stupid. It is, Logan agreed. The third question was the one Logan had been waiting for, came after a longer pause with a weight to it that the first 2 hadn't carried. Does he know who you are? Logan was quiet for a moment. No, he said, he knows my name. He thinks I'm a mechanic. He thinks you're a mechanic, Victor repeated. There was something in his voice, not quite humor, not quite something else, something without a clean category. Okay, Logan, listen to me. Y'all call me not because you want backup. You'd have asked for that already if you wanted it. You called me because you want information. I called because you know the region, Logan said. I need to know if Derek Voss has connections I don't know about. Anyone he's tied to that changes the calculation. Give me 48 hours, Victor said. And Logan, keep the boy close. I know, Logan said. I mean, very close, Victor said. And this time there was no ambiguity in the weight of it. Logan stood in the parking lot of his destroyed garage in the cooling October air and understood, without Victor saying it directly, because Victor never said things directly that could be said sideways, that the situation was more complex than it appeared from his angle. That Derek Voss was perhaps not simply a regional extortionist working a string of small towns. The calculation might need revising. 48 hours, Logan said. Check your mailbox, Victor said, and hung up. Logan put the phone in his pocket. He looked at the garage. Then he got in his truck and drove home to where Earl had left his son. That night, he moved Caleb's desk away from the window. When Caleb asked why, Logan said the angle of the afternoon light was causing a glare. Caleb looked at him with those dark eyes. The sun sets in the west, Caleb said. That window faces east. Logan paused. Smart kid, he said. Mom always said I got that from her, Caleb said. She wasn't wrong, Logan said. He moved the desk back. Then he moved his own chair to the hallway where he could see both the front door and Caleb's bedroom door without being visible from any window. And he sat there reading until 2 in the when he was satisfied that the night was as quiet as it appeared. Then he went to bed and slept 4 hours and was up before dawn. Next morning, 2 of Logan's regular customers showed up at the garage and found the damage. Tom Herrera, who brought his landscaping truck in every 6 weeks without fail, stood in the doorway and said nothing for a full 30 seconds. Then Logan, who did this? I'm handling it, Logan said. That's not what I asked. I know, Logan said. I'm handling it. Tom looked at him for a long moment. Tom, who had known Logan for 5 years, who had played poker twice a year with him at Earl's kitchen table, who had watched Caleb grow from a small, quiet child into a slightly larger, quiet child, and then Tom nodded the nod of a man who has decided to trust someone even while suspecting there are things he isn't being told. You need help cleaning up, Tom said. You call me. Not insurance, me. I know, Logan said, thank you. By noon, word had moved through Silver Creek the way word moved through small towns, not like a broadcast, exactly, but like weather, touching everything without being traceable to a single source. People knew something had happened at Whitmore Auto. Didn't know the details. They knew it was bad. They knew Logan wasn't talking about it. In a town like Silver Creek, both of those facts together told people something more than either one alone. Angela Marsh came by it too. She walked in, looked at the damage, sat down on Caleb's stool without being invited, said, it was them, wasn't it? Voss's people. Logan didn't confirm or deny. I heard Angela said that they went to the Halverson's hardware over in Millbrook last month. Rick Halverson. You know what happened there? Logan looked at her. Rick paid, Angela said. First visit. Paid every week for 3 months. Then one week he was short $50 short, and they broke his daughter's car window. Daughter's car, she's 16. She was in it when they did it. Angela's voice was very steady and very controlled, the voice of a woman keeping something together through deliberate effort. Still pays. Logan was quiet. Carl pays, Angela said. Getting ready to pay. And I'm telling you right now that I hate myself for even considering it. But Rick Halverson's daughter is 16 and she was sitting in that car and she stopped, took a breath. What do we do, Logan? Tell me what we do. Don't pay, Logan said. Not yet. Give me a few days. Few days for what? To understand what we're actually dealing with. Angela looked at him. She was 52, a woman who had built something from nothing in a town where building from nothing required a particular quality of persistence that most people underestimate. She had not survived 11 years of Silver Creek's economic cycles and bad seasons, and the thousand small defeats of small business ownership by being naive or easily placated. You know something I don't, she said. It wasn't a question. I know several things you don't, Logan said. But the one that matters is that men like Derek Voss don't actually offer protection. They sell the illusion of protection from themselves, which means the only sustainable solution isn't paying them, it's removing them. Angela looked at him for a long, careful moment. Who are you, she said. Not aggressively, not with suspicion exactly. More with the tone of a woman who has just registered that the piece she thought she understood has more dimensions than she'd accounted for. I'm a mechanic, Logan said. Angela held his gaze for another 3 seconds. Then she said, okay, and got off the stool and walked out. Logan watched her go. He was thinking about Rick Halverson's 16-year-old daughter, sitting in her car when the window went. He was thinking about Caleb, gripping the counter, thinking about the wooden box on the shelf, Melissa's things, for when you're older. Thinking about Victor Kane, who had said, keep the boy close, and had meant very close. He was building a picture, and the picture was not a simple portrait of a small-time extortionist working a rural corridor. Picture was something else. He didn't know the full shape of it yet. He was about to. Victor's call came at 6:14 in the evening, 2 days after their first conversation, while Logan was in the kitchen making Caleb's dinner, and Caleb was at the table doing homework with a focused intensity he brought to things he found genuinely interesting. Logan looked at the screen, said, I need to take this, and walked to the hallway. Talk, he said. Derek Voss, Victor said without preamble. 41. Originally out of Tucson. 6 years running extortion operations through rural Arizona and southern Nevada. Stays in the small towns under the radar, under the reporting thresholds. The man has a talent for geography. He picks places where law enforcement response times are long, and business owners have more to lose from attention than from quiet compliance. What's his overhead? Logan asked. 8 men on payroll, 3 lieutenants who rotate between his operation zones. He runs protection but also moving product through some of the routes, nothing heavy, but enough that he has connections that go up. Victor paused on that last word, let it land. Up, meaning he has people looking out for him that aren't in Silver Creek. People in Tucson. People who don't like complications. Logan was quiet, processing. He's not just a local problem, Logan said. He is not just a local problem, Victor confirmed. He's the local face of something with a longer reach. Which means if you move against him wrong, you don't just have Derek to deal with. You have what's behind Derek. What's behind Derek, Logan said. That's the part you need to be careful about, Victor said. Logan, I've been doing some checking. This man has been operating in your region for 18 months. Do you know why nobody's touched him? Not the law, not anyone else. Because he's careful, Logan said. Because he's protected, Victor said. He has someone in the county sheriff's department. Don't know how deep. I don't know if it's a look the other way arrangement or something more active, but it's there. Which is why Rick Halverson's complaint went nowhere last spring, and Angela Marsh's cracked windshield never made a report, and why Carl Bennett drove an hour to file in a different county and was told jurisdiction was unclear. Logan leaned against the hallway wall and closed his eyes for a moment. Everything he'd been building, the picture, the calculation, the sense that there was a third option between paying and fighting recalibrated in the space of 10 seconds. Corrupted local contact in law enforcement, which meant the obvious path document report, provide evidence. Let the system handle it was not reliable, which meant that the evidence he was gathering might go somewhere it wouldn't be acted on, or worse, somewhere it would be acted on in the wrong direction. He opened his eyes. The businesses, he said, all of them paying that's documented somewhere. Receipts, records, something. If you can access it, Victor said, Derek's not sloppy with money. There'll be records. because men like him always have records they have to for their own accounting. But you're not going to get those records through a warrant. I'm not going to get those records through a warrant. Logan agreed. Pause. Logan, Victor said, what are you thinking? Thinking there are more ways to end this than the obvious ones, Logan said. Thinking the same thing, Victor said. I'm also thinking that you've been building a life there for 6 years and your boy is 10 years old, and some things, once you start them, have their own momentum. I know, Logan said. So be sure, Victor said. Whatever you decide, be sure, I'm sure, Logan said. About what specifically? Logan thought about Caleb's hand on the counter, about the cracked glass over Melissa's face, about Rick Halverson's daughter sitting in her car, about Angela Marsh and Carl Benet, and every other person in Silver Creek who had been paying $500 a week for the illusion of safety in a town that deserved the real thing. Sure that it ends, he said. I'm not sure yet exactly how. Victor was quiet for a moment. Fair enough, he said. One more thing. Yeah, the tattoo on your arm, Victor said. Any of his people have been watching you, and they have been, Logan, they've been watching since the first visit. That's how this works. There's a chance they've seen it. Or someone who's seen it before has seen you and said something. Logan looked down at his left arm, at the sleeve covering what was there. That information gets to the right person. Victor said the calculation changes. For them, not for you. I know, Logan said. Prepare for that, Victor said. Hung up. Logan stood in the hallway for a moment. Then he went back to the kitchen. Caleb looked up from his homework. Eyes went to his father's face, reading it the way he always read it, that uncanny instrument calibration. Bad news, Caleb asked. Complicated news, Logan said. Dinner's almost ready. Finish that problem. Caleb looked at him for another second. Then, Dad, are we safe? Logan set the pan down. He turned around and looked at his son fully, without the managed expression he usually maintained, just straight, honest, the way Melissa used to ask him to look at her when she needed to know the truth and not the performance of truth. Yes, he said. I will make sure of that. Completely and absolutely. Caleb held his gaze. Okay, he said, and went back to the homework. And Logan turned back to the stove and stood there for a moment with his jaw set and his hands braced on the counter, and thought Derek Voss is about to understand what he actually did when he walked into that garage. Not the garage he saw, the garage he thought he was in. The garage of a mechanic, a lonely widower, a quiet man raising a kid in a small desert town who would eventually comply the way everyone else complied. That garage, that man. Derek Voss had no idea that garage didn't exist. The man behind the counter had never existed, not in the way Derek imagined him. What existed was Logan Whitmore, the real one, the full one. The full one had been patient and quiet and buried for 12 years. He was done being buried. The next day, Logan opened the garage at 7 as usual. Damage was still there. He hadn't hidden it, hadn't rushed to repair it because the damage was information and he wasn't ready to erase information yet. He worked around it, pulling the one functional vehicle bay into service on a job he could complete with the equipment that survived. 10 in the morning, a silver SUV pulled into the lot. Logan knew before the door opened that it wasn't a customer. The man who got out was not one of the 4 from Thursday. He was older 60 maybe, with white hair, and the kind of deliberate bearing that comes not from military service, but from years of inhabiting rooms where other men were careful around him. He wore a jacket despite the October warmth, and he moved with the unhurried certainty of a man who expected to find exactly what he was looking for. Came into the garage and looked at the damage, and then he looked at Logan. Logan looked at him. In the look that passed between them, in the 3-second silent exchange of two men who each understood precisely what kind of men they were looking at, a significant amount of information was transferred without a word being spoken. Victor Kane sent me, the man said. Logan put down his wrench. I know who you are, the man continued. I know what name you used to go by. I'm not here about any of that. He paused. I'm here because I've been watching Derek Voss for 7 months. You are the first person in this region who said no to him, took the hit, and is still standing. Logan studied him. Who are you? The man reached into his jacket and produced a card. He set it on the workbench. Not the blank white kind Derek Voss carried. This one had a badge number on it. Logan picked it up. Read it. Set it back down. Federal, Logan said. Organized Crime Task Force, the man said. Southwest Division. We've been building a case on Voss's operation for 14 months. The local contact in your county sheriff's department, we know about him. That's part of what we're building. Logan was very still. What do you want from me, he asked. Nothing yet, the man said. I'm here to make sure you know that whatever you're planning and you're planning something, I can see that from across the parking lot, you don't do it in a way that burns the case we're building. I wasn't planning to, Logan said. I know, the man said. Victor told me you were smart. He also said you were stubborn. He's not wrong about either, Logan said. The man picked up his card from the workbench and put it back in his pocket. Then he reached into a different pocket and produced another card, plain handwritten number, no other information, and set that one down instead. That number, he said, reaches me directly. No routing, no record. If you find something, we can use something documented, something that ties Voss's operation to his accounts, his contacts, his arrangement with the county, you call that number. Logan looked at the card. And if I find it in a way that isn't entirely procedural, he said. The federal man looked at him for a long moment. The look of a man who has been doing this long enough to understand that the law and justice are not always the same geography. Call the number, he said, and we'll have a conversation about what we can use and what we can't. He turned to go. At the doorway, he paused. Voss knows your name, he said, without turning around. As of yesterday afternoon, he knows more than your name. A beat. He made some calls. Found an associate of his who did time in Flagstaff 12 years ago. That associate remembers a name from before. Not the name Logan Whitmore. Logan felt the air in the room shift. He knows, Logan said. He knows enough to be scared, the man said. And scared men do stupid things, Mr. Whitmore. Scared men with something to protect do very stupid things very fast. He turned then, just enough to look back over his shoulder. Keep your son close. He left. Logan stood alone in the garage. He looked at the bent back door, still imperfectly closed against its damaged frame. He looked at the shovel head under the tarp. He looked at the shelf where Melissa's photograph sat behind its cracked glass. Then he looked at the plain card with the handwritten number, picked it up and put it in his shirt pocket next to his heart. Derek Voss was scared. That was new information, and it changed everything about the next move. Because fear in a man like Derek Voss didn't produce retreat, it produced acceleration. Produced the kind of outside had. It produced the kind of escalation that people who'd never seen it coming didn't know was possible until it was already happening. Logan understood it completely. Because he had been, in another life, the thing that men like Derek Voss became scared of. Pulled out his phone. He texted Caleb's school, please ensure Caleb is held until I arrive for pickup today. Do not release to anyone else. The school responded in 4 minutes, of course, Mr. Whitmore will make sure of it. Then Logan put on his jacket and picked up his keys and stood at the garage door for a moment, looking at the shape of everything he'd built in this town. The garage, the life, 6 years of deliberate and chosen ordinariness, and understood that the next phase of this situation was going to require him to be, for a time, something other than ordinary. He didn't feel afraid of that. He felt if he was honest with himself, and Logan Whitmore was always honest with himself, even when honesty was uncomfortable, a clarity that he hadn't felt in 12 years. Purposefulness. The feeling of a man who has spent a very long time making sure his capabilities stayed locked in a room he never opened. Suddenly understanding that the room is exactly what the moment requires. He locked the garage. He drove to Caleb's school. He picked up his son, who looked at him with dark eyes and said nothing in the car for 2 full minutes before finally asking, it's getting worse. Head, isn't it? It's getting clearer, Logan said. Is that the same thing? Sometimes, Logan said, not always. Caleb looked out the window at the desert passing. Dad, he said, are you going to tell me what's happening? Like, really tell me? Logan kept his eyes on the road. He thought about the promise he'd made to Melissa. Thought about what Caleb was old enough to handle. Thought about the dark-eyed 10-year-old who could read a room better than most adults and who had gripped a counter with shaking hands and said, don't touch that, to a man twice his size. Thought, this kid deserves the truth. Not all of it. Not, but enough to understand what his father is. Yeah, Logan said. I'm going to tell you, tonight, at dinner, the real version. Caleb was quiet for a moment. Okay, he said. And then, can I ask one question now? Yeah. Those men, Caleb said. The ones in the garage. You weren't scared, it wasn't a question. But it had a question inside it. No, Logan said. I wasn't. How? Caleb asked. Logan thought about how to answer that. Thought about 14 years, and a tattoo under a sleeve, and a name that an associate in Flagstaff had remembered, and passed along to a scared man who was about to do something stupid. Because I've been through things, he said, that make those men look very small. Caleb turned from the window and looked at his father's profile. I want to know about those things, he said. Tonight, Logan said, dinner. And for the first time in 12 years, Logan Whitmore prepared to open the door to the room he had kept locked, not because the past was safe to revisit, not because the story was easy to tell, but because his son deserved to know who his father really was, not the performance of the man, not the carefully maintained version of the man, but the actual full-dimension truth of the man who had chosen him, chosen this life, chosen peace not from ignorance of violence, but from a thorough and complete understanding of it. Because Derek Voss was scared, and scared men moved fast. The next 72 hours were going to determine everything. Dinner that night was spaghetti, because spaghetti was what Logan made when he needed his hands busy and his mind free to organize itself. Caleb knew this about his father without having been told, knew that the nights his dad made spaghetti were the nights something real was being worked through, and that the cooking was not really about the food. The same way the Saturday mornings on the Shovelhead were not really about the motorcycle. Logan set 2 plates on the table. He sat down. He looked at his son. Caleb looked back at him with those dark, patient eyes and did not touch his fork. Okay, Logan said. Here's the real version. He started at the beginning. Not the very beginning, not childhood, not the years before the years that mattered, not the accumulated geography of how a man becomes who he becomes. He started at 22, which was when the path forked in a direction that 12 years later, Logan still examines sometimes. Late at night, trying to find the exact moment when a different choice was available and whether he would have had the wisdom to take it. He told Caleb about the Hells Angels. Not the mythology, not the television version, not the simplified cultural shorthand that most people reached for when they heard the name. The real version, brotherhood with its own code, its own hierarchy, its own demands on the people inside it. Told it plainly, without romance and without apology, the way a man tells the truth about something when he's decided that truth is what the moment requires. Caleb listened without interrupting. This was one of the things about the boy that Logan had noticed. Since Caleb was very small, he was a listener. Real one. Not the kind of listening that was actually just waiting for your turn to speak, but the full attention kind, the kind that registered not just words, but the weight behind words, the pauses, things that were being said around the edges of the things being said directly. Logan told him about the tattoo, about the name he used to go by, not Logan, not Whitmore, different name, the name that belonged to a different man in a different life, and that he had not spoken aloud in over a decade. He told Caleb about the respect that life earned and the cost that respect carried. Told him about meeting Melissa. She wasn't impressed by any of it, Logan said. That was the first thing I noticed about her. Every single person in my life at that point related to me through the context of what I was in that world, what I represented, what I could do. And she looked at me like he stopped, found the words, like she was looking at the person underneath all of that and deciding whether she liked him, without the context, just the person. Caleb was very still. She liked him? Caleb asked. She liked him, Logan said. She also told him he was wasting himself. On our third date, just said it, flat out, over coffee. You're wasting yourself on this, like it was a simple observable fact, and she couldn't understand why nobody had mentioned it before. Caleb almost smiled. That sounds like her. Logan said. I remember the way she talked, Caleb said quietly. Not always what she said, but the way. Like things were obvious that other people thought were complicated. Logan looked at his son for a long moment. Yeah, he said. That's exactly right. He told Caleb about the promise, about leaving, about the mechanics of walking away from that world cleanly, which was its own kind of delicate operation, requiring the same skills the world had taught him, but applied in a completely different direction. Told him about Silver Creek, the garage, The 6 years of building something from scratch that belonged entirely to the man he chose to be. Those men know? Caleb asked. The ones who came to the garage, they know who you were. Derek Voss does now, Logan said. Or close enough. He knows I was Hell's Angels. He knows the name from that time. Doesn't know the full picture, but he knows enough. Caleb processed this. His fork was still untouched. That dangerous? Him knowing? It changes his calculation, Logan said. It makes him scared. And scared men with a criminal operation that depends on nobody pushing back, they don't retreat when they get scared. They escalate. So he's going to do something worse, Caleb said. Question. Probably, Logan said. Soon Caleb said. Yes, Logan said. Caleb picked up his fork. He twirled spaghetti in the careful, methodical way he did everything. Then he set it down again. Are you going to stop him? He asked. Yes, Logan said. How? That, Logan said, is what I'm working on. Caleb looked at him steadily. Can I help? Logan looked at his 10-year-old son, at the boy he had spent 6 years and every reserve of himself trying to protect from the world that had shaped him, and felt something move in his chest that had no clean name. You can stay safe, Logan said. That's the most important help. Caleb considered this. Then, with the precise honesty that was entirely Melissa's, that's not really help, Dad. Just doing what you tell me. Logan was quiet for a moment. Fair point, he said. They ate dinner. For the first time since Logan had moved to Silver Creek, the thing he'd kept in the locked room sat at the dinner table with them, visible, acknowledged, real. It was uncomfortable. The way true things are sometimes uncomfortable when they've been kept in the dark for a long time. But it was also something else. It was a relief he hadn't known he needed, the relief of being fully known by the person who mattered most. Caleb went to bed at 9. Logan sat at the kitchen table with a yellow legal pad and began writing things down. Not plans exactly, not yet. Inventory. Every piece of information he'd accumulated. Victor's intelligence on Voss's operation. The federal contact's information about the corrupted county connection. Angela Marsh's account of Rick Halverson's daughter. The records that Derek Voss would have somewhere, accounts, amounts, dates, names, the internal accounting of a man who ran his operation like a business because it was a business. He wrote for 2 hours. At 11, he looked at the yellow pad and felt the shape, the third option, the one that wasn't paying and wasn't simply fighting, become a little clearer. He went to bed. At 2:17 in the morning, his phone buzzed. Victor. A text, 4 words. He found the Halverson connection. Logan was out of bed before the second buzz, which came 3 seconds later. Check on the boy. He was already in the hallway. Caleb's room, door open the way he always slept. Boy in bed, breathing even, undisturbed. Logan stood in the doorway for 30 seconds, watching his son sleep, and then he went to the front window and looked out at the street. Still, dark. A light on in a house across the way that was always on. He'd noticed that months ago, the insomniac neighbor who left the kitchen light burning all night. Nothing unusual. He went back to the kitchen and texted Victor. He's fine. What's the Halverson connection? Victor responded in 2 minutes. Rick Halverson's brother-in-law is a county deputy. Not the compromised one, a different one. Clean record. Voss found out. He's using Halverson's family as leverage to make sure Rick doesn't talk to federal. Logan set the phone down. He picked it up again. He thought about what it meant that Derek Voss was, right now, the middle of the night, making moves to shore up his operation against the possibility of someone talking. Meant Derek was scared. Also meant Derek was active, not retreating, not reassessing, but working the problem the only way he knew how to work problems, by tightening his grip on everything he could reach, which meant Logan's window to act was narrowing. He texted the federal number, the handwritten one, the one that went direct with no routing. Voss is moving to consolidate. He's using Halverson family as leverage against county deputy. You need to know this tonight. The response came in 4 minutes, which told Logan the federal man was also awake, also working the problem. We know. Move is already in progress to secure the Halverson family. Stay out of it tonight. Tomorrow we need to talk. Logan looked at the text. Then he put the phone in his pocket and went and sat in the chair in the hallway, the same chair he'd sat in the night. After the federal man visited, positioned to see both the front door and Caleb's room, and he sat there in the dark and thought. Federal case was building. The Halverson leverage moved tonight. was paradoxically a sign that Derek was overreaching. Scared men tightened their grip, and in doing so revealed exactly what they were afraid of losing. Every move Derek made from here on would be visible to people who were watching for it, because scared men were readable in a way that calm men weren't. That also meant the danger to Caleb was real and immediate in a way it hadn't been 48 hours ago. Derek now knew who Logan was, or enough of who Logan was, and a man who put leverages on deputies' families in the middle of the night would absolutely consider using a 10-year-old child as the most personal pressure point available. Logan sat in the chair until 4:30, thinking through scenarios with the same methodical thoroughness he brought to a complex engine diagnosis. 4:30, he had a plan, not a perfect plan. No plan that involves a scared criminal and a federal investigation and a 10-year-old son is perfect, but a functional one with clear steps and contingencies and a decision tree that accounted for the most likely ways it could go wrong. He made 2 calls at 5 in the morning, one to Earl, one to Tom Herrera. Both of them picked up on the second ring, which told him they'd been expecting to hear from him. He didn't tell them everything. He told them enough. She said, "I need Caleb somewhere safe for the next 48 hours. Somewhere not connected to me, not his school, not anywhere routine. Can one of you," Earl said, "he can stay at my sister's in Mesa. She doesn't know any of these people. She's not connected to Silver Creek, and she makes the best breakfast burritos in Arizona. Caleb would be fine." "Done," Logan said. "I'll bring him this morning before he wakes up." "Logan," Tom said. He was still on the call. Logan had three-wayed it without explaining why, which both men had silently accepted. "Whatever you're doing today, you need backup? Not the kind you're thinking," Logan said. "Stay available." "We're available," Earl said simply. Logan woke Caleb at 5:45. Caleb woke like he always woke, immediately, fully, without the gradual surfacing that most people needed. Eyes open, present, reading the room. He read the room. "We're going somewhere," Caleb said. "You are," Logan said. "I need you somewhere safe for a couple of days." Caleb sat up. Logan watched his son process this, the flicker of resistance, the calculation behind those dark eyes, and then the thing he was most proud of in Caleb, the decision to trust. Not the blind trust of a child who doesn't understand the situation, but the considered trust of someone who has weighed what they know about the person in front of them and decided that the person has earned it. Earl's, Caleb's sisters, in Mesa. "Will I be back for school Friday?" "Plan on it," Logan said. Caleb got up and packed a bag in 11 minutes, which Logan counted because he was a man who noticed things like that, and because 11 minutes of calm, purposeful packing from a 10-year-old who'd just been woken before 6 to be sent to a stranger's house it was Melissa's steadiness running in his son's blood, and it hit Logan in the sternum like something physical. "Dad," Caleb said, door, bag over his shoulder. "Tell me one thing." "What?" "When this is over," Caleb said, "are you going to go back to that life?" Logan looked at his son. "No," he said, "I'm going to fix the garage." Caleb held his gaze for a moment. Then he nodded once, the nod of someone who has received the answer they needed, walked to the truck. Logan drove him to Earl, who drove him to Mesa. Logan watched the truck's taillights until they were gone. Then he went back to the garage. It was 6:40 in the morning. The sun was just getting started over the desert. The garage sat with its damaged door and its wrecked interior, and the shovel head under its tarp. Logan stood in the middle of it all and felt, with a clarity that was almost physical, that everything was about to move fast. He was right. At 8:15, a car he didn't recognize pulled into the lot. 2 men. Neither one was from the original 4, and neither one was a customer. He sat in the car for 3 minutes without getting out, which was a particular kind of message, the kind that says, "We see you, and we want you to know we see you." Logan went to the front of the garage and opened the door and stood in it and looked at the car. After a moment, the driver's window went down. The man in the driver's seat looked at Logan. He was perhaps 35, with the flat professional expression of a man who did this kind of work as a job and not out of personal feeling. "Mr. Voss would like to meet," he said. "Tell Mr. Voss he knows where to find me," Logan said. "Been finding me just fine." The driver looked at him without expression. "Tonight, 7 o'clock. He'll send an address." "I'll consider it," Logan said. Driver's window went up. The car left. Logan went back inside and called the federal number immediately. Voss wants a meeting, he said when the line connected. Tonight. We know, the federal man said. We've had eyes on his communications since 3 this morning. A pause. Logan, are you going to go? That depends on what you need, Logan said. We need his records, the federal man said. The operational accounting amounts, dates, names, all of it. We know he keeps it. We know it's not digital. Physical ledgers, at least 2 locations. We haven't been able to get close enough to either one without burning the surveillance. But a meeting changes that, Logan said. A meeting creates movement. Movement creates opportunity. If he brings documents to the table, which he might, if he's trying to demonstrate to you the scale of what you're dealing with, which is a tactics scared men use, or if the meeting location happens to be one of the storage sites. You want me to go, Logan said. We want you to make your own decision, the federal man said carefully. Full knowledge that if you do go, we will have eyes on it. You will not be alone. Logan thought about this. What about Caleb? Your son is in Mesa, the federal man said, which told Logan that the federal surveillance was thorough in a way he hadn't fully appreciated until this moment. He's safe. We have people aware of his location. Logan was quiet for 10 seconds. Send me the address when Voss sends it, he said. Logan, the federal man said, one more thing you should know before tonight. His voice shifted dramatically, but in the register of a man about to deliver information he'd been holding. Victor Kane. You called him 2 days ago. I know I did, Logan said. Victor Kane has been working with our office for the past 6 months, the federal man said. He's the one who flagged Voss's operation to us initially. You called Victor. Victor called us. Logan went very still. He reached out to you, Logan said. Not the other way around. Correct, the federal man said. Victor Kane has been building toward this case for half a year. When he heard that someone in Silver Creek had refused Derek Voss and taken the retaliations and was still standing, he told us, that's the man who can close this. The silence on Logan's end lasted 5 full seconds. He set me up, Logan said. He gave you the opportunity, the federal man said carefully. There's a distinction. Victor Kane, Logan said, almost to himself. The complicated mixture of things he felt about this was not something he had language for. In the moment, the sense of being both used and trusted, both maneuvered and believed in, the way that Victor had always operated in the gray space between those things, and somehow made you feel that the gray space was where the honorable action actually lived. Of course he did. Are you in? The federal man asked. Logan looked around the garage, at the damage, at the tarp over the shovel head, Melissa's cracked photograph on the shelf. I'm in, he said. The address arrived at 2 in the afternoon. A warehouse on the industrial edge of a town called Ridgeway, 20 minutes from Silver Creek. Logan looked it up, cross-referenced it with what he knew, texted it to the federal number, with one additional line, seen this address before, on a route that Voss uses for moving product. There may be more than just Derek there tonight. The response came back fast, we know. 12 men on our end. You walk in, we have eyes on every exit. The moment you have eyes on documents or accounting, records anything documenting the operation, you find a reason to step outside. We do the rest. Logan read the text 3 times. Then he went to the shelf, picked up Melissa's photograph. He looked at it for a long moment, at her face, at the laughter in it, sunlight in her hair, and the desert behind her, and the 30-year-old woman who had looked at a man wrapped in 14 years of a world she couldn't respect and had seen somehow through all of it to the person worth keeping. I'm handling it, he said quietly, the way you would have wanted. He set the photograph down. He checked his phone. He changed into a clean shirt, rolled his left sleeve down, buttoned the cuff, drove to Ridgeway. The warehouse was lit from inside when Logan pulled into the lot at 6:58. 2 men at the entrance who checked him for weapons, professionally, thoroughly, and found nothing because Logan had left nothing to find. This was not the meeting of a man who was going to fight his way out. This was the meeting of a man who was going to listen and observe and find the ledger. Inside, Derek Voss was waiting. He looked different from the first meeting. Composure was the same, the expensive clothes, the careful bearing, but underneath it, something had shifted. Logan could see it in the set of his jaw, the way his eyes moved to Logan, and then away, and then back. The specific energy of a man who has learned something that has reorganized his understanding of his situation. He was scared. He was trying very hard not to show it. He was not succeeding. 4 men visible. 2 near the far wall, 2 near the door Logan had come through. 1 table in the center of the room. On the table, Logan saw it immediately with the peripheral precision of a man trained to see the things that matter without looking directly at them. A flat metal box, locked, the kind used for document storage. Mr. Whitmore, Derek said. Mr. Voss, Logan said. Sit down. I'm fine standing, Logan said. Derek looked at him. Look of a man recalibrating in real time. He'd prepared for this meeting with a specific model of who Logan Whitmore was, what he knew, what he feared, what leverage would move him. Logan's simple refusal to sit was already outside that model, in a way that was small but telling. I know who you are, Derek said. The real version, not the mechanic story. I know you know, Logan said. Then you understand why I thought we should talk directly, Derek said. Man to man, without the theater of what happened at your garage. He said the last part with a dismissive gesture, as if the destruction of Logan's business was a minor staging choice that he was prepared to move past graciously. Logan said nothing. Also no, Derek said, here his voice dropped a register, taking on the weight of the information he was about to deploy. The federal task force that's been looking at my operation has been looking at it for 14 months. And I know that Victor Kane, who you called 3 days ago, has been feeding them information. He paused. I want you to know that I know all of that, because I want this conversation to start from an accurate place. Logan looked at him. Okay, Logan said. Starting from an accurate place. Good, Derek said. He moved to the table. He put his hand on the metal box. Then you also know that what I have in here is the reason the federal case hasn't been able to close. Because the evidence they need, the direct documentation, tying the payments to my operation, is in here. Not in a place they can access. Not on a network they can breach. Right here. He tapped the box. Logan's pulse, which had been entirely steady from the moment he walked in, moved 1 beat faster. And I want you to understand, Derek continued, that I'm prepared to walk away from Silver Creek, from this whole corridor. Clean break. No further contact with any business in your town. No further contact with you or your son. He said it smoothly, with the practiced confidence of a man presenting a deal he considers fair. Change for one thing. What thing, Logan said. Victor Kane, Derek said. I want to know what he's given them and how much. You call Victor. You have a conversation. You find out the shape of what they have. You tell me. The warehouse was very quiet. Logan looked at Derek Voss, at the scared man behind the composed surface, at the box on the table with the documentation of 140 families' extorted money, 4 visible men, and whatever other men were in the building that he hadn't yet counted, and he thought about all of it for exactly 3 seconds. Then he said, no, Derek's composure cracked, just slightly, just enough. You understand what I'm offering you? A clean... I understand what you're offering, Logan said. My answer is no. Your son is in Mesa. Derek said, the way he said it flat, informational, the tone of a man playing his final card, told Logan everything about how desperate this situation had actually become for Derek Voss. I know where he is. I know the address. I know the woman whose... Logan took 2 steps forward. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't change his expression. He simply moved 2 steps closer to Derek Voss. The quality of the air in the room changed so completely and so fast that the 4 visible men all moved simultaneously, a reflex, animal response to the atmospheric shift, and then stopped because Logan had stopped, and because something in the way Logan had moved, those 2 steps had communicated something that made stopping feel like the correct instinct. Listen to me carefully, Logan said very quietly, because I'm going to say this once. Derek Voss was absolutely still. My son is safe, Logan said. He's been safe since 5 this morning, in a location that you believe you know, and that I can promise you is no longer accurate. The men you sent to verify that location are going to find it empty, because the people watching over my son are better at this than your people are. That's the first thing. He held Derek's eyes. The second thing, Logan said, that the box on that table, the records, the ledger, the documentation of every dollar you've taken from every business in this corridor is not your leverage. You brought it here because you thought showing me the scale of your operation would intimidate me. Instead, you've brought it to a room that has 12 federal agents outside it. The moment you mentioned my son's location, the moment you made a threat against a child, you crossed the line that lets them come through that door. Derek's face had gone through several expressions in the last 10 seconds. Logan watched them cycle disbelief, recalculation, anger, and underneath all of it, the raw animal panic of a man who has suddenly understood that the room he's in is not the room he thought he was in. You're wired, Derek said. The room is covered, Logan said. There's a difference. Took one more step forward, close enough that this was unambiguously personal now, to man, the full force of the thing Logan had spent 12 years keeping in the locked room present in the space between them. You walked into my garage and threatened my son. You came to my town and destroyed what my neighbors built. You put a 16-year-old girl in a car and broke the window around her. His voice was still quiet. It was always quiet. I didn't come here to make a deal. Came here so that when those agents come through the door, they find the ledger on the table with the man who owns it standing next to it and no ambiguity about what it represents. Derek Voss said nothing. Outside, the first sound of federal vehicles in the lot. Logan held Derek's gaze for another second. Then he stepped back. It's over, he said simply. The doors of the warehouse came open simultaneously, all of them. Every exit, with the coordinated precision of an operation that had been positioned and waiting for exactly this moment. Agents and federal markings clear and unambiguous. The four men near the walls made the individual calculations that all men in their position make in that moment and reached the correct conclusion: compliance. Derek Voss looked at Logan Whitmore across the table between them. You're not a mechanic, Derek said. It came out small, almost involuntary, the last effort at understanding of a man whose model of the situation had been wrong from the very first Tuesday morning he'd walked into Whitmore Auto. I'm a mechanic, Logan said. I'm also the wrong man to walk up to. The federal agents moved to Derek. One of them not the man Logan had spoken to, younger agent with the focused efficiency of someone executing a well-planned operation, picked up the metal box from the table and looked at Logan with the quick professional nod of someone acknowledging a job done. Logan turned and walked to the door. Outside, the cold October air hit his face, and he stood in the lot for a moment, looking up at the sky over Ridgeway, breathed. Phone buzzed. Earl, kid's good. Had 2 helpings of breakfast burrito, asks if you're okay. Logan typed back, tell him yes. Tell him I'll call in an hour. He put the phone in his pocket, thought about Melissa, about the promise on the steps of the house in Flagstaff, about the man he'd decided to become and the 12 years he'd spent becoming him, the 48 hours that had required him to be, temporarily, the man he used to be, not because he'd failed to change, but because the change was real enough, solid enough, to be deployed with precision when it mattered. Thought about the ledger in the federal agent's hands with its months of names and amounts and dates, about Carl Benet and Angela Marsh and Rick Halverson and his daughter and every other person in this corridor who had been paying and afraid and silent. Thought about the shovel head under its tarp with its crumpled front end and its 8 months of Saturday afternoons and its 2-person project that was going to need more work now. He got in his truck. He called Caleb. Caleb picked up on the first ring. Hey, Logan said. Hey, Caleb said, a beat. Are you okay? Yeah, Logan said. Is it done? Logan thought about the word done, whether it applied and what it would mean for it to apply, and how much of what happened in the next days and weeks and months would determine the shape of what done looked like for Silver Creek. The hard part is done, he said. Caleb was quiet for a moment. Then, in the voice that was Melissa's clarity running through his 10-year-old son like a current through wire, come get me tomorrow. First thing Logan said, okay, Caleb said. And then after a small pause, Dad, shovelhead. We'll fix it, Logan said. I want to do the fender, Caleb said. The whole thing. By myself. Logan looked out the windshield at the dark desert road that would take him back to Silver Creek. Deal, he said. Drove home through the October night, through the particular quiet of a rural Arizona highway at 9 in the evening, the stars very clear and very far up and the desert flat on all sides, thought about how a person holds 2 things at once, the man he was and the man he chose to be, and how the strength was not in the fighting, had never been only in the fighting, but in the choosing. Choosing every day. in the knowing exactly what he was capable of and electing, with full knowledge and no illusion, to use it in service of something worth protecting. Pulled into Silver Creek at 9:47. He drove past the garage, dark, locked, damaged but standing. Drove to the house. He parked. He sat in the truck for a minute in the driveway, in the dark, in the silence of a small town at night. Then he went inside. He made coffee. He sat at the kitchen table. He looked at the yellow legal pad with his notes from 2 nights ago. He picked up a pen. At the top of a fresh page, he wrote 2 words: fix everything. Below that, he began a list. The list was long. He was not bothered by that. He had time. He had the tools. He had a son who wanted to do the fender himself. He had everything he needed. The list on the yellow legal pad was still on the kitchen table when Logan woke up the next morning. He'd slept 4 hours. Not from anxiety. The anxiety, if that's what it had been, had discharged itself in the warehouse in Ridgeway when the federal agents came through the doors and the metal box left Derek Voss's hands. What kept Logan from sleeping longer was simpler and more fundamental than anxiety. It was the particular restlessness of a man who has been running at full operational intensity for 5 days and whose body hasn't yet received the message that the acute phase is over. Mind was still scanning, still cataloging, still turning over contingencies for situations that no longer existed. He made coffee. He looked at the list. He added 3 items he'd thought of during the 4 hours in bed, and then he put the pen down and drank the coffee and let the morning be quiet for a few minutes, which was something he almost never allowed himself and which felt, this particular morning, like a thing he had earned. 7:15, he called Earl. "How's the kid?" he said when Earl picked up. Eating his 3rd burrito, Earl said, "My sister is very pleased with him. She says he has excellent table manners and a sensible attitude about vegetables. Thinks she wants to keep him." "Tell her she can't," Logan said. "Coming this afternoon, he knows," Earl said. "He's been up since 5. He found my sister's toolbox in the garage and reorganized it by size and function." Logan was quiet for a moment. "Yeah," he said. "That's him." Logan. Earl's voice shifted slightly, dropping the gentle humor it carried in the morning. "What happened last night? Is it done? Derek Voss is in federal custody," Logan said. "The ledger is in federal hands. The county contacted the compromised deputy. They picked him up at 11 last night." He paused. "Done, Earl." The silence on Earl's end lasted several seconds. Particular silence of a 71-year-old man who has seen enough of life to understand that some endings are real and some are provisional, and who is deciding which category this one belongs to. "Okay," Earl said. "Okay, good. I'll tell Caleb." "No," Logan said. "Let me tell him. I'll be there by 2. He showered, drove to the garage. He stood in the parking lot for a moment, looking at the building, making a preliminary assessment of the repair work the way he always assessed repair work methodically, without letting the scale of the damage interfere with the practical calculation of what it would take to address it. The back door needed replacement. The diagnostic computer was finished. He'd need a new one, which was the single most expensive line item. 2 customer vehicles were going to require bodywork he couldn't do himself. He'd need to call a body shop in Tucson and arrange transport and absorb the cost and talk to the customers about timeline. The compressor could potentially be rebuilt. The bay lighting had taken damage. Shovel head. He pulled back the tarp. The shovel head looked worse in the morning light than it had in the immediate aftermath. The front fender was not just dented, it was structurally compromised, bent at an angle that meant the front fork geometry was affected. Which meant the wheel alignment was affected, which meant what had looked like cosmetic damage was actually going to require a partial disassembly of the front end before they could even assess the full scope of the problem. Logan stood looking at it for a long time. He put the tarp back. He went inside and sat at the front counter and opened his laptop and began sending emails to his 2 affected customers, honest, direct, detailed explanations of the damage and his plan to make it right, and a commitment to a timeline. He had been dreading these emails more than almost anything else in the last 5 days because the professional shame of handing someone's vehicle back in worse condition than you received it was, to Logan, category of failure that sat differently from all the other kinds. The first customer, a woman named Patricia Okafor, who'd brought in a 2018 Honda CR-V for a brake job and had ended up with a caved-in passenger door panel, responded within 20 minutes. Her email said, "Logan, Tom Herrera told me what happened. Please do not worry about the car. I have rental coverage. Take your time. I'm just glad you and Caleb are okay." Logan read the email twice. He typed back, "Thank you. I'll still make it right. That's not negotiable." The second customer, Earl, actually, because the F-150 had been one of the vehicles in the bay, back for a separate issue and returned to Logan's care, had apparently already been fully briefed by himself and responded with, "Don't be ridiculous." Logan almost smiled. At 9:30, Angela Marsh walked in. She was carrying 2 coffee cups from the diner, which she set on the counter without ceremony. She sat on Caleb's stool and looked at Logan with the particular expression she'd been wearing, Kinsale, since the second time she came to see him, the expression of a woman who is continuously revising her understanding of the person in front of her, finding the revisions increasingly significant. "On the news," she said, "regional news. Federal arrest in Ridgeway. Operation connected to extortion ring across rural Arizona and Nevada. No names yet, but it'll be his name," Logan said. "Day or two." Angela wrapped both hands around her coffee cup. "The ledger," she said. "The payments. Carl's payments, my payments, all of it. Is it in there?" "Everything," Logan said. "Every payment, every business, every week. Federal prosecutors have it." Angela was quiet for a moment. Jaw worked slightly. The way a person's jaw works when they're containing an emotion that's larger than the present moment can fully accommodate. "Rick Halverson's daughter," she said. "Is she as the family? They're safe," Logan said. "The federal team moved on that the same night." "She was sitting in the car," Angela said. "She called me after, you know. I didn't know that until she called me. She's 16 and she called me and said, 'Ims Marsh, I don't know who to tell,' and she stopped. Set down the coffee cup. I should have done something sooner." "You came to me," Logan said. "That was something. Wasn't enough." "It was a part," Logan said. "Parts add up." Angela looked at him. "Who are you, Logan Whitmore?" "Because I have been coming in here for 4 years to get my delivery vans serviced, and I thought you were just." She stopped again, searching for the word. "Mechanic," Logan said. "A mechanic," she agreed. That's not the whole of it." "No," Logan said. "It's not the whole of it. But it's the true part." Angela considered this. "Then, the other part. The part I'm guessing I'll read about eventually, or hear about, or put together on my own." "The chapter," Logan said. "Mine. Old one. Does it have anything to do with why you were able to walk into whatever happened last night and come back out of it without getting hurt?" "Yes," Logan said. "And does Caleb know?" "He knows," Logan said. Something in Angela's face shifted then, not into surprise, exactly more into a kind of rearrangement. The expression of a woman absorbing a fact that reorders several things she thought she understood. "Good," she said finally. "He should know." She picked up her coffee. "Town meeting tonight. The community center. People are gathering because of the news, because of everything people want to talk about, what happened, what this means, what comes next. Carl's organizing it." A pause. "Will you come?" Logan had not known about a town meeting. Thought about it for a moment. The garage, the list, Caleb and Mesa waiting to come home, the 100 things that needed doing before the week was out. He said. Angela nodded. She stood. She picked up her coffee. She paused at the door. "Logan, whatever the whole of it is, whatever the chapter is." She met his eyes directly. "Thank you for having it." She left. Logan sat with that for a moment. Then he got back to work. By noon, Tom Herrera had shown up with 2 members of his landscaping crew and, without being asked, had begun work on the damaged back door, measuring, assessing, making a list of materials needed. Carl Benet arrived from the hardware store an hour later with the materials on Tom's list, plus several items he'd added based on his own assessment. 2 men worked on the door for the rest of the afternoon without significant conversation, in the efficient and purposeful manner of people who have decided that action is the appropriate language for the moment. 2 o'clock, Logan drove to Mesa. Earl's sister's house was in a quiet neighborhood of small, well-kept yards, the kind of street where people knew each other's names, and the mailboxes were all the same regulation height. Logan pulled into the driveway, and before he'd cut the engine, the front door opened, and Caleb came out, backpack already on, moving with the particular energy of a 10-year-old who has been patient for a day and a half and has reached the limit of patience. He stopped at the edge of the driveway when he saw his father's face. He read it, the way he always read it. "It's over," Caleb said. "It's over," Logan said. Caleb crossed the driveway and didn't stop, walked straight into Logan and wrapped both arms around him with the full-bodied, uncalculated embrace of a child who has been trying very hard to be steady and has reached the moment when steadiness is no longer required. Logan put both arms around his son and held on. They stood like that in Earl's sister's driveway for a while. Earl's sister, a woman named Diane who was 63 and had Earl's same quality of unhurried good sense, stood in the doorway and watched them and didn't say anything, which was exactly right. Eventually, Caleb stepped back. He wiped his face with the back of his hand in the quick, matter-of-fact way boys do when they don't want to make much of the fact that they've been crying. "The garage," he asked. "Damaged," Logan said. "Repairable." "The shovelhead?" "Also repairable. More work than we thought on the front end." Caleb nodded seriously. "I looked some stuff up," he said, "on Diane's computer. For a 78 shovelhead with front fork damage, the geometry issue is usually in the triple tree. Check the triple tree first before we do anything with the fender. We might save ourselves from having to redo work." Logan looked at his son. "When did you look that up?" he asked. "This morning," Caleb said. "Around 6, I had time." Logan thought about Caleb at 6 in the morning in a stranger's house in Mesa, looking up vintage motorcycle repair specifications because that was how he processed being scared, not by dwelling on the fear, but by finding the next useful thing. Melissa's son down to the bone. "You're right about the triple tree," Logan said. "We'll start there." They said goodbye to Diane, who made Caleb promise to come back sometime when everything wasn't on fire. Caleb said he would. Logan believed he meant it. Drive back to Silver Creek, Caleb was mostly quiet. Good kind of quiet, not the watchful, worried quiet of the last several days, but something more settled, a quiet that had space in it. Somewhere around the halfway point, he said, "Are people in town going to know about your past?" "Some of them will figure it out," Logan said. "Some already have." "Does that bother you?" Logan thought about Angela Marsh saying thank you for having it. Thought about Tom and Carl working on his back door without being asked. Thought about Earl, who had heard the summary of Logan's past, the same night he'd heard about the garage and had said nothing about the past and focused entirely on what needed doing. "Less than I expected," he said. Caleb absorbed this. "Because they already know you," he said. "The you that matters." "Yeah," Logan said. "That's it exactly." They got back to Silver Creek at 4:15. Caleb walked into the garage, set his backpack on his stool, and stood looking at the damage with the same methodical assessment his father used. He walked the perimeter. He looked at the compressor, looked at the customer bays. He stood for a moment in front of the shelf where Melissa's photograph sat behind its cracked glass. He reached up and took the photograph down. He looked at it, then he looked at Logan. "I'm going to get a new frame for this," he said. "Okay," Logan said. "Tonight before the store closes." "Okay," Logan said again. Caleb set the photograph carefully on the counter, propped against the register. He looked at it for one more second and then turned around and looked at the rest of the garage with the expression of someone who has identified the priority and is now ready to address everything else in order. "What do we do first?" he asked. "Tonight we go to a town meeting," Logan said. "Tomorrow we start on the garage." Caleb looked at him. "A meeting? What kind of meeting?" "The kind where people who've been scared for a long time find out that they don't have to be scared anymore," Logan said. "Try to figure out what that means." The community center was a building that Silver Creek used for everything: elections, holiday events, the occasional wedding reception when someone's family was too large for the venue options. Seated about 200, and when Logan and Caleb walked in at 6:50, it was close to that capacity. Logan had not expected that. He had expected 30, maybe 40 people, the inner circle of Route 9 business owners, and whoever had heard about the federal arrests on the regional news and put enough together to be curious. Instead, the whole town, or close to it. He stopped just inside the door and took in the room. He recognized most of the faces: customers, had neighbors, people who waved at him on the way to the mailbox, people whose trucks he serviced and whose names he knew and whose dogs he'd met and whose kids he'd watched grow incrementally taller each time they came into the garage with their parents. Carl Benet was at the front, which was appropriate since Carl had organized the gathering, standing at a folding table looking simultaneously nervous and resolved, which was how Carl looked at most things. When he saw Logan come in, his face did something complicated, and he raised a hand in acknowledgement. Caleb, beside Logan, was very still. "There are a lot of people here," he said quietly. "Yeah," Logan said. Do they know about you?" "Don't know what they know," Logan said. "Let's find out." They found seats near the middle. The meeting began informally, Carl speaking in the earnest, slightly formal way he had about things he took seriously, which was most things. Talked about what had happened in the region, about the extortion operation, about the months of payments and fear and silence. Talked about the federal arrest. His voice was not entirely steady, but his words were clear, and as he spoke, Logan could feel the quality of the listening in the room, the particular attention of people who are hearing someone say out loud a thing they have been carrying in silence, who are experiencing the relief and the weight of that simultaneously. Several other people spoke. Rick Halverson, who had driven down from Millbrook, stood up and told his family's story with a plainness and a dignity that produced a complete silence in the room when he finished. Voice broke once on the part about his daughter, and he didn't apologize for it, and nobody expected him to. Angela Marsh spoke, briefly, characteristically to the point, about the cracked windshield and the calculations she'd been making about whether to pay, and the thing Logan had said to her in the garage that had reframed the situation for her. The only sustainable solution isn't paying them, it's removing them. She said this in the meeting, and several people wrote it down. Then Carl said, "I think most of you know that what happened the way this ended had a lot to do with Logan Whitmore." Logan did not stand up. He did not perform modesty either. Sat in his chair with his hands in his lap and let Carl say what Carl needed to say, which was that a man in their community had refused when everyone else had been pressured to comply, taken the retaliation that came from refusing, found a way through it that ended with the operation dismantled and the evidence in federal hands and the people who had been extorting their community in custody. Carl didn't know the details. He knew the outline, and the outline was sufficient for the room. When Carl finished, a woman near the back, Logan didn't know her name. She was perhaps 60, the kind of face that carries its history, plainly raised her hand and said, "True, he used to be Hell's Angels." The room went very quiet. Logan felt Caleb beside him go still. Carl looked toward Logan, uncertain. Logan stood up. He did it without particular drama, just stood. The way he stood in his garage when a customer came in and he set down his tools to give them his full attention. He looked at the woman who had asked the question. Then he looked around the room at the faces he knew and the faces he didn't. He said, "Yes, that's true." The quality of the room's quiet changed. "I was Hell's Angels for 14 years, Logan said. Left that life when my son was born. I moved to Silver Creek 6 years ago because I wanted to build something clean, something that belonged to who I chose to be rather than who I had been." He paused, kept it private because it wasn't relevant to fixing your trucks. Became relevant this week. Now you know. Nobody said anything for a moment. Then Earl, who was sitting 3 rows back with his arms crossed and the expression of a man who has known something longer than everyone else in the room and is mildly satisfied to see it surface, said, "He fixes a truck better than anyone in this county." That's been true the whole time, regardless. A small sound in the room, not quite laughter. Something warmer. Tom Herrera said from across the aisle, he also apparently knows how to handle a situation. Which, given recent events, I think we can all agree is not a bad thing for a neighbor to have in him. Something shifted in the room. Logan felt it, felt the particular moment when a room full of people recalibrates its understanding of a thing and arrives collectively and without a formal decision at a conclusion. The conclusion was not complicated. The conclusion was, this man is ours. Whatever he was, whatever the chapter was, this man is Silver Creek's and Silver Creek is his. Logan sat down. Caleb beside him exhaled slowly. "Okay," Logan said quietly. "Okay," Caleb said. The meeting went on for another 40 minutes, covering practical things, what to expect from the federal investigation, what the process of recovering overpaid protection money might look like, what steps the community could take to make sure nothing like this established itself again in their corridor. Logan answered questions when he was asked, directly and without elaboration, and declined to answer questions that weren't his to answer. At the end, as people were filing out, a man Logan had seen in town but didn't know by name came up to him. 50s, broad, the hands of someone who worked with them. He stood in front of Logan for a moment without speaking, and then he said, "My dad was a mechanic." A small town like this, back in Ohio, he paused. Men like your dad, men who fix things they hold a place together. People don't always understand that until something goes wrong, and the fixer is the one who deals with it. He extended his hand. "Thank you." Logan shook it. When he looked around for Caleb, the boy was standing near the door talking to Rick Halverson's daughter, who had apparently come with her father, a teenager with quiet eyes, who was listening to Caleb with the particular attention of someone who has been through something and has recognized the same quality in someone else. Logan watched his son talk to this girl he'd never met, thought about the shovel head, the garage, the list, all the things that still needed fixing. Thought, this is what it looks like. When it works. When the choice holds. They drove home through Silver Creek at 9 in the evening. Caleb had the new picture frame in his lap. He'd stopped at the drugstore on the way to the community center and found one that fit, simple wood, dark finish. Turned it over in his hands during the drive, not looking at it, just holding it. The girl, Logan said, "Rick Halverson's daughter." "Maya," Caleb said. "You knew what to say to her?" Caleb was quiet for a moment. "I didn't really say much. Just told her I understood what it was like to be scared and not know what was happening. Trust your dad even when he's not telling you everything yet." Logan kept his eyes on the road. "I think that was exactly the right thing," he said. "I learned it from somewhere," Caleb said. Home, Caleb replaced the photograph in the new frame and put it back on the shelf, not pushed back from the edge this time, but right at the front, where the light from the fluorescence would catch it directly. Stepped back and looked at it. Melissa, 29, laughing in the desert, undimmed. "Better," he said. "Much better," Logan said. "They had dinner. They did the dishes." Caleb went to bed without being told. It happened approximately once a month, and which Logan always noted privately as a sign that the boy had reached his processing limit for the day and needed sleep more than he needed to push back against bedtime. Logan sat at the kitchen table with the yellow legal pad. He looked at the list. He put a line through several items that were complete or in progress. What remained was mostly garage-related: the compressor, the diagnostic system, the bodywork coordination, the shovel head. He added one item at the bottom of the list, frame for Melissa's photo done. Then he sat back and looked at what was left. His phone buzzed. The federal number, the handwritten one. Voss has made his first statements. He's cooperating. The ledger is everything we needed. Case closes fast. You'll be contacted by the prosecutor's office about a statement, your choice whether to provide it. Logan read the text. Then he typed, "I'll provide it." Pause. Then one more thing. The county deputy who was on Voss's payroll. He named 3 other jurisdictions where similar arrangements existed. This goes further than Silver Creek. The work you did here has implications in communities you've never visited. Logan looked at that last sentence for a while. He put the phone face down on the table, thought about all the other Silver Creeks, the other small towns in the Arizona desert, in rural Nevada, in the corridors between places that nobody paid much attention to until something went wrong. The other Angela Marshes, the other Rick Halverson daughters, the other Carl Bennett's, writing checks with shaking hands. Thought about the thing Earl had said at the meeting: he fixes a truck better than anyone in this county. Thought about what it meant to fix something. Just the mechanical act of it, but the choice of it, the choosing every morning to be the person who shows up with tools and attention and the patience to do the work correctly, even when the work is harder than it looked when you started. Phone buzzed again. Victor this time. Heard it went well. Logan typed back it went. Victor, the name from before. The one the associate remembered. It's going to surface in the coverage. Logan, I know. Victor, you okay with that? Logan looked at the yellow legal pad, the list, at the item he'd crossed off about the photograph frame. Melissa's handwriting on a grocery list that had somehow ended up tucked into the back cover of the pad years ago and that he'd never removed. He typed, "I've been okay with it for a while. I just didn't know it yet." Victor didn't respond immediately. When he did, it was a single line. Melissa would be proud. She always was. She just didn't always say it. Logan looked at that sentence for a long time. Then he put the phone down. He got up and went to the hallway and stood in the doorway of Caleb's room. Son was asleep, breathing even the way 10-year-olds sleep when they are genuinely tired fully, completely, without the watchful half-wakefulness of recent nights. The new picture frame was not in here. That was on the garage shelf. But on Caleb's nightstand, Logan could see the library book about the Mars rover, face down and open to whatever page Caleb had gotten to before sleep took him. Logan stood in the doorway for a moment. He thought, 12 years ago, different life, with a different name, he would not have been able to imagine this. Not just this specific room, this specific boy, this specific small town in the Arizona desert. He would not have been able to imagine the whole category of it, the ordinary, the daily, the small accumulated weight of a life built on presence and choice rather than reputation and fear. He would not have been able to imagine that this was what the strongest version of himself would look like. Not the man who could do what he'd done in 53 seconds in a garage, or what he'd done in a warehouse in Ridgeway. The man who chose every single day to be here, be the mechanic, to be the father, to be the neighbor who showed up and fixed the thing that was broken and asked for nothing but the ordinary right to continue doing it. He went back to the kitchen. He picked up the yellow legal pad, folded it in half, and put it in the kitchen drawer, where he kept things he wasn't done with yet. Then he turned off the kitchen light. He went to bed. Besides, Silver Creek was quiet the way it was always quiet at this hour. Porch lights, distant dog, the insomnia light in the house, across the way, burning steadily in its kitchen window. Town was the same as it had been a week ago. The streets, the yards, the same storefronts on Route 9. Something was different. Something that didn't have a visible address in the geography of the town, something in the air of it, in the particular quality of its nighttime quiet, in the way its people had sat in a room together and said the true things out loud and gone home, carrying something lighter than what they'd carried in. Fear was gone. Not because nothing bad would ever happen to Silver Creek again. Bad things happened everywhere, to everyone, varying degrees and forms, single event, and no single person could insulate a community against all of it. But this specific fear, the paid and silent and corrosive fear of men who had used a community's isolation against it, that fear was gone. In its place was something that communities build slowly, over years and crises, and the accumulated evidence of who shows up when things go wrong. Trust. The mechanic on Route 9 had held the line, and Silver Creek knew it. Across town, the garage sat locked and dark. Inside, the shovelhead waited under its tarp, front end compromised, geometry needing assessment. 8 months of Saturday work, paused but not finished. Not finished. There was still the triple tree to check, the fork alignment, the fender that Caleb had claimed as his, the whole front end to evaluate and rebuild from whatever they found when they started pulling it apart. There was still all of that. There was, tomorrow morning, Saturday after that, the stool behind the counter, the radio on the workbench, the work, always the work, the best kind. The garage reopened on a Monday. Logan didn't announce it. He didn't put a sign in the window or post anything anywhere or call his customers to let them know. He simply unlocked the front door at 7 in the morning the way he always unlocked it, turned on the lights, put the radio on low, started a pot of coffee in the back office. That was all. By 7:40, Tom Herrera's landscaping truck was in the lot. Tom came in with 2 breakfast sandwiches from the diner and set them on the counter without comment. New compressors arriving Thursday, he said. I called in a favor with the distributor in Tucson. Got you the commercial rate. Logan looked at him. You didn't need to do that, I know, Tom said, and sat on Caleb's stool and unwrapped his sandwich. By 9, Carl Benet had arrived with a replacement panel for the damaged bay wall, which he'd apparently custom ordered and cut himself in the hardware store's back room. He carried it in, leaned it against the wall, looked at Logan, said, sorry I paid him. Voice was steady, but the weight in it was not. I should have done what you did. Didn't know what I knew, Logan said. I knew it was wrong, Carl said. Just chose comfortable over right. He picked up the other breakfast sandwich from the counter and took a bite. because Carl had never in his life refused food, regardless of emotional register. I'm not going to do that again. I know, Logan said. By 10:30, four more customers had come through, not for repairs, all of them, though two had actual vehicle issues. They came to see the garage, to see Logan, to register, in the particular way of small town people who do not always have the vocabulary for what they're feeling, but find other ways to say it by showing up, by staying longer than they needed to, by finding reasons to linger, that the thing Logan had built here still stood, and that they were glad it did. Noon, Caleb arrived from school, dropped his backpack on his stool, assessed the state of the garage with the same systematic sweep he'd been doing since he was old enough to reach the counter, said, "The compressor's still not here." Thursday, Logan said, "Okay." Caleb went to the back office and got himself a glass of water. When he came back out, stood in front of the shovel head, Logan had moved back to the center of the work area that morning, tarp pulled off and folded and set aside. Caleb walked around it slowly, the way he walked around problems completely, covering all angles before settling on an approach. "Triple tree," he said. "Triple tree," Logan confirmed. Caleb crouched down and looked at the front fork with the focused intensity of someone who has been thinking about this for 4 days and has arrived with a plan. "I looked up the torque specs last night," he said, "for the stem nut. If the tree's bent, we're going to need the specialty tool. Earl probably has it." "Earl has everything," Logan said. "I'll call him," Caleb said. He stood up and looked at his father. "We start Saturday?" "We start Saturday," Logan said. Something that had been held tight in Logan's chest since the Thursday the back door came off its hinges released itself quietly, without drama, like a breath he hadn't known he was holding. The week moved. The federal prosecutor's office called, and Logan gave his statement clean, factual, everything that was relevant and nothing that wasn't. The regional news ran the full story on Wednesday. Derek Voss, the extortion ring, the ledger, the network of arranged protection across 4 counties. Logan's name appeared in the coverage. Not prominently, but it was there. A paragraph near the end, with a brief reference to his history that was accurate in its facts and incomplete in its understanding of what those facts meant, which was fine. The facts were enough. The understanding was Silver Creek's to have, and Silver Creek already had it. Victor Kane called on Wednesday evening. "You read the coverage," Victor said. "Wasn't a question." "I read it," Logan said. "How do you feel about it?" Logan thought about this honestly. "Like someone took a photograph of me from far away and published it," he said. "Shape is right. The details are approximate. That's how it always is," Victor said. "Logan, I should have told you when you called me that I was already talking to the federal team. Should have been straight with you about that." "Yes," Logan said. "You should have." A pause. "I'm sorry," Victor said. The thing about Victor was that he didn't say things he didn't mean, which made the words land with the full weight of their intention. "Put me in position to end it," Logan said. "I understand why you did it the way you did it. Doesn't mean you were right to." He paused. "We're okay, Victor." "Okay," Victor said. He sounded relieved in the understated way of old men who don't show relief easily. "Boy, he's researching torque specs for a shovelhead triple tree," Logan said. Victor was quiet for a moment. Then very quietly, "Melissa would have loved that." "I know," Logan said. Saturday came the way. Saturdays came in Whitmore Auto early, with coffee and the radio, and Caleb arriving at 9 with the particular focused energy he reserved for the motorcycle project. Earl showed up 20 minutes later with the specialty tool for the stem nut and, without being asked, positioned himself on an overturned crate where he could observe the proceedings and offer opinions. "I'm not here to help," Earl clarified. "I'm here to supervise." "You're here to drink our coffee," Caleb said. "That too," Earl said. They worked through the morning. Caleb took the triple tree in his hands, careful, precise, following the sequence he'd memorized from the repair manual. Logan worked alongside him without taking over, which was its own kind of discipline, the discipline of watching someone learn by doing and trusting the process, even when you could see the faster path. Triple tree came apart. They assessed together. Logan, holding his phone light at the angle that showed the stress fracture Caleb had correctly predicted would be there. "There it is," Caleb said. He said it with a quiet satisfaction that had nothing to do with being right and everything to do with having understood the problem correctly. We need a replacement. I ordered one Tuesday, Logan said. Comes next week. Caleb looked up at him. You ordered it before we even checked. I was pretty sure about the triple tree, Logan said. Caleb almost smiled. So was I, he said. Earl, from his crate, said nothing, but the expression on his face was the expression of a man watching something he has waited a long time to see and finds, now that he's seeing it, to be exactly what he hoped. They broke for lunch sandwiches from the diner, eaten at the front counter, the way they always ate on Saturdays, Dave, with the radio playing and the October sun coming through the front window at the angle that meant early afternoon. Caleb ate and read, and Logan drank his coffee and looked at the garage around him, the still damaged sections and the repaired sections and the new panel on the bay wall and the photograph on the shelf, Melissa, laughing, in the new frame at the front where the light caught it. Caleb set down his sandwich and said, without looking up from his book, do you miss who you used to be? Question landed softly, but completely. Logan recognized it immediately, not as something Caleb had been working up to, but as something that had surfaced naturally from wherever the boy had been carrying it, the kind of question that comes out when the guard is down and the moment is right and the person asking trusts completely that the answer will be honest. Logan looked at the garage, at the motorcycle, at the photograph. Son, no, he said. Caleb looked up from the book. Because I already have everything I fought to find, Logan said. Caleb held his eyes for a moment, the measuring look, calibrating instrument, reading not just the words but the weight behind them, the presence or absence of performance, the signal underneath the signal. He found what he was looking for. Okay, he said, went back to the book. Earl, from his crate, cleared his throat quietly and looked at the ceiling, which was how Earl handled moments that were larger than he wanted to show a reaction to. They went back to work after lunch, and the afternoon settled into its rhythm tools and instructions and Caleb's careful hands and the radio and the coffee going cold on the workbench and the particular quality of Saturday light in a garage in the Arizona desert, warm and sideways and full of the kind of ordinary time that is not ordinary at all. That is, in fact, the rarest and most valuable kind of time there is. The kind that only exists when you've made enough right choices to deserve it. 4:30, Angela Marsh came by. She stood in the doorway and looked at Caleb working on the shovel head and looked at Logan, and she said, Rick Halverson called me this morning. Daughter Maya wants to know if there's somewhere in town she can volunteer on weekends. Something mechanical, she said. Angela paused, something moving in her expression. She said the boy from the town meeting told her that fixing things was a good way to stop being scared. Logan looked at Caleb. Caleb had heard. He was not looking up from the shovel head. Tips of his ears had gone slightly red, which was the only way Logan could ever tell that his son was embarrassed. She can come here, Logan said, Saturdays. If she wants to learn, I'll teach her. Angela nodded. She looked at the photograph on the shelf, the new frame, the clear glass, Melissa laughing. She looked at it for a moment, and then she looked at Logan, and she didn't say anything, but the thing she would have said if she'd had the words for it passed between them anyway. She left. Caleb straightened up from the shovel head and stretched his back and said, without ceremony, I told her 3 things fix fear: work time and people who don't flinch. Logan looked at his son. Where'd you get that? He said. I made it up, Caleb said, but it's based on data. What data? Caleb looked at him with those dark eyes, Melissa's eyes, the eyes that had been reading Logan Whitmore since they were old enough to focus. You, he said simply. Logan had no answer for that. He didn't need one. He picked up his wrench and went back to work. Caleb went back to work. Earl stayed on his crate and supervised. The radio played. Outside Silver Creek moved through its ordinary Saturday in the ordinary way of a town that had come back to itself. The shovelhead wasn't finished that day. It wouldn't be finished for weeks, the replacement part, for the triple tree, and then the fender work that was Caleb's alone, and then the reassembly and the alignment check and the first careful test of whether everything that had been broken could be made to run again. But it was going to be finished. That was the thing about broken things, Logan had learned. Breaking was not the end of the story. The breaking was just the part that revealed how much you wanted to repair it, how much the thing was worth to you, what you were actually made of when the easy path was to walk away, and the right path required every tool you had, and more patience than you thought you possessed. He had always been made of the kind of thing that stayed. He had just for a while forgotten to let anyone see it. The sun went down over Silver Creek. The garage lights came on. Earl went home for dinner and came back 45 minutes later with 3 servings of his sister Diane's enchiladas in a paper bag, because Earl was a man who understood that the most practical form of love was showing up with food. They ate in the garage, Logan on an upturned crate, Caleb on his stool, Earl in the camp chair he'd brought from his truck. And the enchiladas were excellent, and the radio was still playing, and the shovelhead sat in the middle of the floor half apart and full of the particular promise of things that are in the process of becoming what they were always supposed to be. Logan Whitmore was a man who had walked through fire in a previous life and come out knowing exactly how fire worked, and choosing every day after to be the thing that fire cannot touch, steady, present, patient here. Criminals who had come to his garage had made the oldest mistake a person can make about a quiet man. They had confused his peace with weakness. They had mistaken his stillness for vacancy. They had looked at a man who had chosen the ordinary life with full knowledge of every other option, and they had assumed the choice was made from ignorance. It was not. It was made from the deepest and most deliberate kind of strength, the kind that knows exactly what it could do and decides, with clear eyes and no illusions, what it should do instead. They had walked into the wrong garage, and the wrong garage had set the whole county free.